Welcome to Inside the Deal, Healthcare VCs to Watch. I'm Carrie Nixon. I'm the founder and managing partner at Nixon Law Group. We are a boutique law firm that works with healthcare innovators who are building the future of care. This video series is aimed at spotlighting investors who have proven to be really valuable partners to founders in digital health and healthcare technology companies. And so I am really pleased today to be joined by David Kereiakes of Windham Capital. So I have to let you all know that one of our clients let me know that David has been invaluable to them as they have scaled and grown their company. And so to me, that really makes him a healthcare VC to watch. So David, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you, Carrie. I appreciate you having me, and I'm humbled to be included. So,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, David, you've been in the health tech space for quite a while now. Before coming to Windham Capital, I understand that you spent 7 years at another healthcare focused VC and 6 years before that at Providence Ventures. And that's a big deal because for those of you who don't know, Providence is the third largest nonprofit health system in the country. So, given all of that experience, I always like to ask what first drew you to healthcare?
healthcare is a really important part of my life. There's four reasons, I think, as I boiled down, what has gravitated me to this particular space. There's easier ways to make money. There are easier industries to solve for, but none as impactful as healthcare. And so, I grew up in a family of 20 physicians, nurses, and scientists. And so healthcare has always been part of the family. I contemplated becoming a doctor myself, but wanted to have not only an impact on patient lives, but the lives of those delivering care, just seeing the burden that my family members carried. I also have a personal reason. July 7th, 2007, in room 7, I happened to find myself as the sickest patient in probably the state of Ohio, and spent a week in intensive care and ended up recovering from that experience. But having myself been saved multiple times by the system, you realize how vulnerable of a state you're in and how beholden you are to the experts and those that are doing what they can to help you. And then having 3 children myself, and constantly visiting the ER or the pediatrician. All of us are exposed to healthcare on a daily, monthly, yearly basis. And I think all of us share a sense of frustration with the system in its current state and the challenges in it. And somebody has to fix it. And it takes a lot of effort. So, to make it better, despite the amount of money and resources that we pay for it, I think it's nowhere near the type of experience that all of us expect for the U.S., given the amount of money that we spend on it. And then fourth, the entrepreneurs are unlike any other industry. The people that you get to work with and those who are working tirelessly to solve some of these problems. It's inspiring. It's fun. It's exciting. I mean, I'm privileged to be able to do the job that I do today and get to work with so many incredible people there.
I couldn't agree more. And thank you for that background. That is super, super, super interesting. And, when you talk about working with some of the best people who are really trying hard to make a difference, that's exactly why we do what we do at the law firm as well. It's a pretty fulfilling place to be.
Yes.
So we talked about Providence being one of the largest health systems in the country. What did your time there teach you about investing in sort of a particular innovation technology and then actually having to have that technology implemented throughout the health system?
So despite its size, Providence, I think, is arguably the most innovative healthcare system in the country and thus the world. Half the C-suite is former big tech, and a very diverse group. It sits in the city of disruption in Seattle and in fierce competitive markets along the West Coast, including Southern California. And so, where other health systems are feeling the push now to have to innovate, Providence felt that a decade or two ago, given the competitive pressures in the markets that they were operating in, and the push to bring in new blood, new thought process, new strategies into the space. And so the group that I worked with was the in Providence Ventures and the Digital Innovation Group, which was led by a former Amazon executive, now back at Amazon Health, as well as an incredibly innovative mind in Sarah Vaezi, and prior to her, Aaron Martin, who was the Amazon executive. The venture team had been set up roughly 5-6 years before I joined there, and also one of the most advanced and well thought out investment arms that facilitated really unique competitive advantage in the markets that we operated in, and then across the country. And from that standpoint, we had many of the other health systems across the country rely on us or reach out to us based on what had been established at Providence and what we continue to build for new innovative ideas and ways to solve the various problems that are plaguing the entire healthcare system across the country. And the way that we were able to bring in new technologies, leverage our skill set of and deal network across the world to bring in the best, latest, and greatest, allow those technologies to stand on their own clinical and economic merits, work with a group of incredible people within Providence who had a real passion to advance how care is delivered within Providence, and thus, the rest of the country. It was a fascinating position to be in, and seeing new world strategies in Amazon, Microsoft, Google's cultures integrated into a 180-year faith-based nonprofit health system. When I started in 2018 with Providence, we heard this is how things have always been done, even at an advanced state that Providence had gotten to. When I left, we were no longer hearing that. It was where we are looking and needing the best innovation in order to continue to survive and advance care and reduce the various bottlenecks that we are feeling within the system. I think living within a nonprofit helped me to understand where those bottlenecks are, why they are felt, how different departments are incentivized to make a decision, to not make a decision, and be able to help a company that really does have an innovative solution that has been clearly chosen through a sales cycle that doesn't have our influence or bias on it, but pulling from that sales cycle the learnings from it to then try and repeat elsewhere in a different profile health system, whether academic medical center, single site, or a large independent integrated delivery network, really can help a solution address a material problem and have healthcare get out of the way, its own way. So it was a fascinating time.
Yeah, I know a lot of folks don't like it when someone from outside of healthcare comes into healthcare, particularly as a leader or a founder. And I actually think it is a great thing as long as that person sort of, understands what they don't know in terms of sort of the complexities of the landscape. But I always think it's a great thing because sometimes it really helps to have an outside healthcare perspective to what is actually happening. So I think that's really neat, and I'm sure it is part of what has made Providence continue to be a leader in the space.
It is. I think you have to support them with people who do have experience. To your point, Carrie, they have to understand what they don't know, and it's hard to have that. I think building the team around you, and it's incredibly important whether you know and have experience in healthcare or not. But the team is the most important thing and highest correlation to success for a startup or a company of any size. And it's critical to have those advisors around you and to be willing to accept and understand, the guidance and principles that they have to share.
Yeah, without sort of caving into, well, this isn't the way we do things, right? Right? That's
Yeah. Yes.
yeah. Well, okay, so at this point, you have led or co-led more than $350 million in healthcare investments. That is a pretty big deal. So, what are the mistakes that you see founders make during fundraising or as they build their company?
It's a great question, and hard for me to sit here and say, this is the right way to do it. This is the wrong way to do it. The entrepreneurs themselves are in a position that it's pretty remarkable, knowing the risk, but still going and diving head first into trying to solve a solution. What I would say is be true to yourself. The right partner will eventually arise. Uh, Unfortunately, there will be a lot of no's. When we look at the number of investment opportunities that we see, regrettably, and it's one of the worst parts of my job, is I by the sheer numbers, I'm a professional no sayer, which is the worst thing. I want to say yes, and I think most of my peers do want to say yes. And so it's important to communicate what it and being transparent. You don't have to share everything in the first 30 minutes, hour long introductory call, but explore the connection that you have with the investor. What do they have expertise in? What is interesting for them? We all have our own insights and perspective and value add that we can bring to the table. And I think it's important to find and pick the investor that you want to work with and that you think can add that value to you. I also think that we, entrepreneurs look to us to give them validation. And I don't know if getting a venture or growth equity investor means that gives you that validation. I think, the ultimate success and where you take a business is really what is validating in the end. We also kind of or entrepreneurs tend to fall into these predefined raises or required capital raises where, $5 million seed investment has to be followed by a $10 million, $15 million Series A, which has to be followed by a $30 to $50 million commercial stage Series B. And that's just not the way that it should work, right? And some textbook, it may say that, but in real life, I think you have to understand that it doesn't have to be that way, nor is it appropriate for every company to raise that kind of money at that kind of time. And so I would say, again, coming back to it, be true to yourself and what the product and company needs, and what the market will afford too. So take the feedback of the market, understand and appreciate the guidance and advice that those who you are talking to and seeking that from provide you. And it may be 2 million. It may be start in a much smaller capacity, prove it out, and preserve a lot more equity for yourself rather than take the capital, an exceeding amount of capital. The worst thing that we can do is ruin a company or have a cap table or the corporate financing strategy prevent a great technology to getting to the patients or the providers that need it the most.
Yeah. I like what you said about, see if you have a connection with this investor that you're talking to,
Absolutely.
right? That to me, and I've heard other founders say, is more important than sort of the check size. It can be more important than the check size, right? It's sometimes it's, well, gosh, I have this investor say, I'm going to do this X amount, but I just didn't feel it, and I wasn't sure they understood where I was trying to go, and this person did, and That's what we're doing. I think that makes a ton of sense. So as you have worked with founders, you mentioned you have to be the no sayer. I'm sure that you also, for companies that you've invested in, had experiences where you've had to give some tough love and some hard feedback. So can you talk about that a little bit? Is there a what was the hardest feedback you ever had to give, and how did they respond?
That's a tough question. So I tend to find myself shoulder to shoulder in the foxhole with the entrepreneurs. So there's very few moments or times where I am delivering news, something that they don't already know or they're not already aware of. The best entrepreneurs in going the other way are quick to share and quick to be open with bad news coming to us. I think that's incredibly important. It's allow us to try and understand and help support. And so there haven't been many times where I have had to deliver something that the entrepreneur that we weren't already working on together. I've been incredibly fortunate over my career. Usually those come with bad investments or investments that don't go the way that you hoped. I've never lost money, nor had a write-off on any of the investments I've made, and never had to replace the management teams that I've backed because I've spent a considerable amount of time with them on the prior to writing an investment, and know that they are the ones that have the skill set to carry the company forward. And I think I've been fortunate and lucky to work with some incredible founders. I would say there is an example where we hadn't invested in the company yet. We got to a week before wiring the money and closing the deal when I discovered what we thought was a small legal agreement that at the very end in the appendix prohibited us from transferring intellectual property, a vast portfolio, to a list of 24 companies. And that list of 24 companies were the potential acquirer universe for the business. It was a deal that the company had licensed a long patent portfolio from a large strategic. And so I had to tell the entrepreneur who had spent all this time educating us and all of these attorney fees and consulting fees and the diligence and all of that effort, that it was something that we couldn't take that risk on behalf of our investors, because we have to invest in businesses that can provide a liquidity event. We don't invest with the intent to sell. We invest with the intent to build a business to be bought. And you want to build it to be bought, not sold. And so, you have to create the infrastructure and alignment to allow the business to be attractive and to be acquired. And that sort of an agreement was one that wouldn't pass. And so we ended up having to deliver that news to the CEO, who took that remarkably well. And as I mentioned in my beginning, the entrepreneurs in this space are incredibly resilient. They don't call quits or settle in defeat. And but the business had to raise capital very quickly. The insiders formed a bridge. They then remarkably went to this large strategic, and the IP that had been licensed to this company was licensed by a different department under this big holding company. It's one of the largest device manufacturers in the world. A different department than their number one competitor. And that department was looking at making their quarterly earnings and settled for a one-time $2 million payment to give a fully transferable patent portfolio over to the company we were looking to invest in. I understand it's kind of confusing when you don't have the names of the groups here, but hopefully you're tracking. And so it was fascinating. And it's a reminder of why venture and growth equity investors and entrepreneurs will continue to have a long career because this big corporate, with two different departments, one being the most fierce and direct competitor of the company wanted to invest in, and the other department just owning the patent portfolio, just wanted to meet their quarterly numbers. And so for $2 million, the CEO was able to negotiate full patent transfer, and we ended up investing in the business after that. And the business ended up growing and being sold for $340 million just 5 or 6 years later, and being one of the most widely used technologies in that space. And so again, it was tough news to deliver because the company was on the brink of disaster, but with the resilience of the entrepreneur and the insiders and some amazing dominoes that fell into place, it ended up being a great success.
That's fantastic. What a good news story. Yeah, when we work with companies or investors in diligencing an investment, it's so hard to be on the end of delivering bad news. But these folks are resilient and they find a way around it. And that's how they succeed. It's pretty amazing.
And Carrie, as you point out, it's better to find out earlier
Yeah.
and to get good legal guidance, which I know you all provide. And so it's important to get that wrapped up earlier, and it just saves for a lot of headaches later in life.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Well, so you mentioned that this deal, did involve a medical device. And so, I know that you have experience investing across both medical devices and digital health. And I'm interested as to whether sort of working at the intersection of those two worlds, helped shape how you look at investments through that lens. And uh, today we're seeing a lot of convergence between, where a medical device is associated very closely with a digital health platform. So I'm interested in your take on that.
Well, it is. It's a very exciting time. I think we're finally starting to turn on the lights in the dark operating room. We're starting to pull unique information. It's no longer we're tracking you when you're in an operating room, or when you're in a hospital bed. We're able to get real time, real world clinical data in to help steer your care and to get ahead of a heart attack or a stroke, and really start to see trends in data to help inform clinical pathways and decisions, potentially saving lives, and then also important, saving money, saving the costs that we're spending in the healthcare system, and turning healthcare to be more proactive instead of a reactive sick care system. And so it creates for some unique challenges in having lived inside of a health system. The people who buy and understand and utilize devices are sometimes different than the IT teams that implement the software, or the administrative teams that deploy the algorithms to pull the unique insight and decision making data points to they're just different, and they take different sales cycles and different approaches, and it's oftentimes you can find yourselves with multiple departments having to approve the use of a particular technology. So it doesn't come without its challenges and struggles, but that's where we are most excited in our ability to help navigate a lot of those sales cycles, know who the call point is, to what budget it might come out of, and where and how to position the value proposition such that it resonates and not well enough that it shortens that sales cycle that can often kill great companies and technologies, or require great capital in order to fund. So a lot of exciting things within that space, and the potential value that it could add to patients and providers.
Yeah, I feel like we just are seeing so much more in the way of intersection. A lot, we are seeing the intersection of medical devices with digital health platforms. We're seeing the intersection of, technology with pharma, right? Wearables, remote monitoring with pharmaceuticals to, make sure that they are acting the way that they're supposed to act. And, the notion of, well, this department being in charge of medical devices and this department being in charge of deploying, the tech, we have to integrate those, right? Or we can't succeed. So that's something I know we need to work on for sure. But I think as we see more and more of it, you know, health systems in particular and health plans are going to learn that by necessity, those departments have to talk to each other and work together for sure.
Yeah, we find ourselves consulting in some form or another with a lot of device manufacturers that want to leverage the software expertise that we have, software companies that want to leverage the clinical experience that we have, and it really is an exciting time to help translate for those groups. But you're exactly right. I think this is the way healthcare has always been done, and this is the box that I live in and what I see. It's got to start changing, and there are certain ways that you can do that in how you define the value proposition, how you position the technology, such that you can cut through a lot of those challenges and really enable the care deliverer or the patient to receive the best care.
Yeah, break the silos for sure. All right, so let's close out. I want to close out with asking you about a habit or a hobby or a daily routine that probably has nothing to do with investing, but that you think probably makes you a better investor.
Well, it's interesting. Investing in healthcare, I think, and living within the healthcare world, I think it's important to keep yourself healthy and find avenues and time throughout the day to care for yourself, work out, relax in some form or another, or separate yourself. I also, so I try to keep a workout routine, as challenging as that is in today's world, but important for all of us to do. And then the other joy I have is most of the time I get to work from home, which allows me the time not to have the commute. But when I do get step away from the desk, getting to spend time with my kids, I think is a really important part for me. And seeing the natural joy and excitement that they have, and realizing that that you shouldn't take life too seriously. I'm very fortunate, particularly growing up in the family that I have, that I understand what a bad day at the office is and what that means. And for me, I'm fortunate that I don't have that same kind of pressure or, realization that a bad day at the office, somebody passes away and somebody that you're caring for, and the family that you're going to have to talk to thereafter. So it's a blessing to be able to do what I do. And I'm reminded of that every day, and being able to step out the door and see my kids. And people don't stop having heart attacks on Christmas. And so, cardiologists, my father included, had to get called in during those times. And so the extra time that I get and the flexibility is something that I'm greatly appreciative of. And it's a reminder of how privileged I am to be able to do what I do.
I think that's a great way to close. I really appreciate the time that you've spent with us today, David. My client that talked with me about you couldn't have been more right. That I can see in everything that you've said that you care deeply about your founders that you invest in, and you care deeply about the healthcare system. So I am really looking forward to staying in touch with you. And for the founders that are watching, I hope that you will check out the rest of our series with interviews with other investors who've shown themselves to be great partners to their founders as well. And as you all may know at this point, we work at Nixon Law Group with founders at all stages. We help them to navigate the increasingly complex legal and regulatory frameworks that make up the US healthcare system. And we're always creating resources to support that journey because it's not necessarily an easy one. So feel free to check those resources out on our website or follow me on LinkedIn. And David, before we close, I want to ask you, what is the best way for companies to reach out to you? Where can they find you?
Carrie, if they're connected with you and you've got my contact information, I've got LinkedIn, and I check that as well. And happy to share my email if needed.
Perfect. We'll do that. If you like email and LinkedIn, we'll be sure to put your email address in the show notes, and folks will know how to reach you.
Well, Carrie, thank you so much for the time and for the thoughtful questions and including me in such an impactful program that you have here. So I'm grateful for the time and questions and all the work that you're doing here.
Right back at you. Right back at you. All right, everyone, stay tuned for more conversations with VCs shaping what's next in healthcare. And thank you again for watching Inside the Deal Healthcare VCs to Watch.